Roll call. You turn the
Mike
mic
Nelson?
down on your screen. I'm here.
Tom McDonald,
Here.
Jennifer Finley. Here. Jim Molitor, Carol Langford, Danielle Matt. Here. Bing Matt. James Steele Jr. James Steele Jr.
Down there. Yes.
Martin Charlo,
Wait a second.
Len Tuteeth, Lenice Trahan.
I didn't turn it weird on. I see. Colin was last prayer. Jennifer, will you give us a prayer this afternoon?
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Today I say prayers of thanks that we're all here and that we still exist as a people and that we still exist as a tribe, despite all the efforts to annihilate us. And I say prayers of strength for all of us that we may endure on this land where we belong, to protect it, and that our hearts be strong to protect the most vulnerable people of our tribes who are depending on us. And I pray for anybody who is sick, lonely, or who feels forgotten, or who feels like they don't belong, that they may know that they are loved and wanted and that they belong in this place. Lemlemsh.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have minutes from March 27th.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Len.
just a minor change on the bottom where we got motion by Martin for FIP to only use CSKT emergency hires. I think I was the one that made that motion, and I believe Martin, didn't you vote against that?
Yeah, I didn't make the motion on that and I did vote against it.
The motion was to get paid for last year's before we move forward and to have this year's money in hand before we move forward. Yeah.
Was there something about emergency hires though?
Isn't that an emergency hire program?
The program we used when we hired
Yeah.
the
Was it?
workers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And we wanted our money up front. Yeah, no, I remember all that, yeah. I didn't know it was emergency hire for.
Yeah. And, the correction is that the motion was made by Lynn, correct? And that we had 3 against it, Danielle, Carol, and Martin. Any other corrections?
Motion to approve with correction.
Motion by Len to approve minutes from, March 27th with corrections. Second by, who said that? Tom? Second by Tom, all in favor?
I'll abstain.
2, 4, 7, 4, and Jennifer abstains. And we have an agenda for today. I don't think we probably have any walk-ins.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Martin, approve the agenda, the additions. Second by Tom, all in favor? Unanimous. Let's go ahead and move into the agenda with, Melinda, come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So today I'm here to get council approval for a project-specific agreement between CSKT and MDT for a resurfacing project that they have called named Perma East and West. And it's a pavement project, pavement preservation project that they're gonna do a mill and fill and seal and cover and new pavement markings, signing, rumble strips, and the paving 2 of the existing pullouts. There is a map, I believe it says about 6 miles long on page 6 of where that's gonna take place.
Motion by Len to approve the project. Second by Martin, all in favor? It's unanimous. Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Melinda, last week I received a call from a tribal member that stopped over at the Jocko Restoration Project. And he informed me that, there were no tribal members working. And, so he approached the contractor to try to find out what it's gonna take to hire a tribal member. They didn't want to talk to him. They said, you need to just talk to the tribe. We're out here, we're doing a job, and
Yeah.
that's something we don't know anything about, but
Mhm.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
All right,
Um,
yeah, I guess, they did say that they were gonna have the contractor reach out to me when they were gonna go to work, and so I haven't heard from them, so I guess I'll get in touch with them and see what's going on.
Okay,
Yeah,
Melinda, can you, provide us monthly updates on these projects and tell us exactly how many tribal members are working?
yeah,
Because
do you just want me to?
we do have members approach us and say, hey,
Mhm,
we didn't see any tribal members on these
Mhm.
projects. One of them specifically was the Post Creek Hill one.
yeah,
And I remember I drove by
Yeah.
there a couple times.
and that was, some drilling and stuff, so those were more, specialized positions that we weren't able to fill. They weren't doing really any construction there. So if they were like, there were like laborers or like really like heavy equipment operators, I would have filled those positions. But a lot of those positions were like drill operators and stuff like that. And they might have like worked as heavy equipment operators, but most of them were drill operators and like traffic control supervisors and stuff like that.
Okay,
So, but when Post Creek, the construction does come, we'll do more, place more tribal members there. Yeah.
I don't know a solution right offhand when we run into those types of scenarios,
Mhm.
for their specialized,
Yeah.
positions that they're looking for. But
Mhm.
there's gotta be something that we need to be addressing on this, whether they
Yeah.
pay an increased Indian preference fee, if they're not, if
Mhm.
they cannot, hire tribal members for these
Mhm.
specific positions or something.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we're, having that information available for us, for the members, when they do approach us with those types of concerns. Because
Alright.
when they're asking us about a specific project, I don't have an answer for them, because I don't know who's all working there. And
Mhm.
I just think that's, important information that we need to have available for all of us. So if you
Yeah.
can probably provide that every month, because,
Mhm.
construction season is gonna start picking up here.
Yeah, it is. We're getting really busy the last couple weeks with stuff like starting or getting planned for starting. So yeah, we
Okay.
can do that.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Do you just want me to email it to you guys, or you want me to come and present and get on the agenda?
Make time on the schedule so we can get you on, and so it's showing up in the minutes.
All right.
I think that would be beneficial to the members.
All right. All right, that sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Melinda.
Yep. And then I'm just gonna come up and get your signature on this PSA, Mike.
That'll work. Yep. Probably what I'll be doing. Afternoon, Greg.
Good afternoon, sir. Tribal council members.
Hey, Melinda.
Good afternoon, all. Can you see the screen? Good afternoon. So I'm here this afternoon with two resolutions. First one is for tribal credit transactions. You'll recall I was here in December of last year for a tribal council resolution for signature authority. And Mr. Vice Chairman, you reminded me of the omnibus resolution for the chairman and vice chairman and the designates to make signatures on behalf of the organization. And it was presented in that fashion that chairman or vice chairman or designate will do that. We used that resolution, and then they rejected the omnibus. The title company has rejected the omnibus resolution for tribal council leaders to sign their forms simply because credit isn't mentioned. So the resolution here before you here is providing signature authority for title documents that tribal credit transactions, and it references the omnibus document, and it simply states that the chairperson, that the chairman or the designate shall be the authorized signature for tribal credit transactions.
Questions, anybody? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Greg. Is it just a one credit title company? Is it the one title company that's a problem, or is it all three?
Right now it's Lake County, and I've resisted putting their particular name in the resolution. I've left it for all and documents that pertain to all tribal credit transactions that will align with any other type of escrow documents that the tribes use on other acquisitions or transactions. Yes, it is just one.
So what's the issue? I thought we already had this addressed.
The issue is that the resolution that I presented or that I walked away with in December specifically outlined the particular title company and the particular transaction that was being handled. This is a far more broad resolution that puts the council back in position where it should be of signing tribal credit documents.
Thank you.
Motion by Tom to approve the resolution providing signature authority for signing title documents for tribal credit transactions. Second by Len, all in favor? Unanimous?
So the next resolution deals specifically with the tribe's relationship with the motor vehicles division over-the-counter transaction with Lake County. Lake County has added this particular transaction statement of fact that simply goes with registration changes, registration updates, reapplication for any vehicle registration document. It's new. It's something they've just started asking Delphine to provide with all of those different transactions that she takes over the counter at Lake County. So the resolution and the request is to empower the Director of Financial Management and their authorized designee within Property and Supply in order to continue to handle the registration details with Lake County and the over-the-counter transactions that pertain to fleet management, ordering and replacement of license plates, et cetera.
Go ahead, Len.
But what exactly, in regards to the membership, applying for registration over at the Department of Motor Vehicles, so they're able to scan the tribal IDs now? Is that what? Scan the tribal IDs so we don't have to provide an additional document showing that we reside in Lake County, or is it just the tribal IDs?
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you have to provide some form of proof that you're a resident of the area, of the county. So you have to have something with your address that says where your physical address is. That's the only other requirement other than the tribal ID.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit confused because I just last week got new tabs for my car and they would not accept my tribal ID. I had to come back here and get a letter saying that I'm a tribal member. I said, don't you have this on file? I've provided this before. And they said, no, you have to do it every time. You have to bring this letter in.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that was the issue and they've changed that. Just changed Thursday or Friday. Yeah, after I threw my real foot in there, I mean, I had a tantrum.
I was annoyed too, and my tabs expired yesterday. So I had to do it last week. So anyway. Yeah.
Motion by Martin to approve the resolution providing signature authority for title registration documents with Montana Department of Justice Motor Vehicles Division. Second by Tom, all in favor? Unanimous.
Mr. Chair, I vote no.
You vote no?
I vote no.
Okay,
I
then
think
we
we
have
should do our own license plates.
7-4 and James Steele no. Greg, go ahead.
If I can
For the
provide
record.
some clarification, this is for the tribal fleet and for tribal vehicles that require registration. Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Greg.
I think Councilman Steele brings up a good point, and I would really like us to take a look at, see what resources that are needed for the tribes to start doing that, to start providing our own registration to our membership and what that's going to cost. So,
Well, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, James.
yeah, I would, like last week when Tom had put his foot in certain places, my thought was, this group that we're talking about here, our tribal government vehicles, that would be a pilot project. Figure out a plate for those folks, get it all ironed out, and then if we wanted to do something to the broader membership, then we could say, hey, we've already got our tribal vehicles all. Then we'd have to figure out what a design would be and all that, but I don't, anyway, thank you.
Good afternoon, Ruth.
It's not, will quickly not be open. Good afternoon. I want to do a couple of our first requests here. Request to purchase capital equipment for tribal health. They need to replace their compressor for dental. And that's an estimated cost of 13,000, a little over that. And they are going to expend that in their regular programs. There's no increase to their allocated budget. And then the other request, I had two capital requests in there. Did I miss that second one, Jennifer?
That's all I got from you.
Okay, then that is the only one. Oh, no, it was. There was one for transit. I don't have that. Okay. I will request that. However, transit has a total vehicle. One of their vans was totaled and they have gotten the insurance reimbursement for that. So they intend to procure a slightly used van to replace that for that insured cost. So there's no additional allocation requested for the budget. We just need your approval because it is a capital acquisition.
Motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by James to approve both capital purchases
Yeah, approve both.
for dental and for transportation. Second by Danielle. All in favor? Unanimous.
Great.
How did the vehicle get totaled?
I do not have that information, but it was a fairly new Toyota Sienna, so it was a fairly expensive vehicle. Hopefully nobody was injured. I am not sure, this is not my information here. I'm scrolling through it going, this is not mine. Is this somebody else's? Okay, here we go. Never mind, page 16. The second action is to request, we have a correction to the Tiwahi Court who had expenditures in 24, but we had to correct what amount was actually carried forward. And then in forestry, we got a new award in forest development and Endangered Species Act surveys. So the net increase there of just over 535,000. The big increase is going to come in when we allocate total contracts and grants. You'll see all of those changes coming down in that column there in the mandatory program increases for government services, health and human services, various programs and all of that, total of just over 19.5 million. So the total increase is 19.9 million. We now have total allocations of 340,577,917.
Motion by Marty to accept all of those changes. Second by Tom. All in favor? It's unanimous. Ruth, I was wondering why it didn't end with an 8. 918.
Rounding, it'll go up or down $1. I know.
No, but 9 plus 9 gives you an 8.
I know. The next increase, I'm going, well, it might wiggle that dollar again. Excel is fun. You know, we always deal in whole numbers wherever possible, especially in allocation. We try to go to even thousands as yet, just to, make them a lot easier to work with on the daily basis. Moving into the revenue report, I didn't expect or anticipate anything in here is, wildly secret or not to be released, but we do not release this information until you've accepted the report. This is really pulling together all of the work that programs do that are generating revenue. So we put it all together, come back to you and report to you what those revenue estimates are, and our discussion of, maybe areas of concern or heightened review or further analysis ought to go. But this is our first step to help you decide how much to make available in the coming year to put out to tribal spending, largely due to what has happened with our corporate dividends. This is the historic year for corporate dividends, not ever at this level until this year, thanks to EKI's very large dividend, SK Technologies, declared 5-year forward that they started last year of 10 million with a 3% increase. So that's 10.3 coming in from SK Technologies, 11.5 from EKI. And then gaming, as you see, just over 6 million. That's including their class 2 of just about 5.9. And then the rest is gaming licenses and fees. So with all the corporations coming in like that, what that has allowed us to say as of 25, when we went into 25, council had to agree that up to 29 million would come from reserve because we couldn't project dividends. So this is suggesting that our reserve is still fairly intact from when we started. So that's good news, you know, to us, as long as we're not overspending or creating any new spending to occur for the rest of this year. So going into 26, unfortunately, our treasury is dipping down yet a little bit more. This is timber stumpage that is just simply vanishing. That's just not coming in as it used to. The projection this year had to be reduced from its original 1.3 down to 700,000. So that's something that we just continue to see not changing much. Indirect cost assessment, you know, up quite a bit from the 25 projection, which was actually an under projection. So it's really kind of staying very close to what it's historically been. Third party, kind of trying to keep that one conservative. It's a bit less than what we've actually seen coming down in both 24 and what's projected for 25. In dedicated trust, as long as the loan terms are not reduced for either EKI or gaming, we will anticipate, and especially with the new loan that gaming will get into, that the income portion of that and also any net investment gains will continue for dedicated trust. Rec permits, they are projecting that slightly more. It's coming in, you know, well ahead of projected as for 24. 25, we just started the new permit year, so that's in progress. The revenue sharing, sitting right at about where we've anticipated it for all three of those agreements now. Marijuana is growing literally quarter by quarter. So in the first year of the agreement, we were averaging about 50,000 a quarter. We're now up to 60+ thousand a quarter. So we're gratified to see that. So coming in at just under 60 million kind of is the starting point, and believing that we are going to see some change right here in the dividends as we get into the beginning of fiscal 26. Lots of, when I worked for Rick, he really liked graphics and charts. And so I've carried that forward, just trying to talk about, without just lots of words and tables, a little bit more pleasing display of what we are talking about. Obviously in treasury is how we pay per capita, to put it just straightforward, on a non-taxable basis, as long as it's derived from trust revenue. I always look at projected treasury as if, you know, things were to change somewhat and the leadership were to look at increases in per capita. This is the figure that we look at, treasury and local. The revenue that is trust in treasury right here in the pie. And dam rental being the bulk of that, 91%. As long as that remains fixed, this chart's not going to ever change. You see the sliver attributed to timber stumpage is shrinking because of its share of the total going down. Leases is generally a fairly ongoing, not much changing there, because you generally would know about that even before I would, as you deal with the leases each and every period that they come up, whether you're actually increasing those amounts paid. There are comps that have to be done on a lot of the leases that lands does, like for the business part and the ag part, and whether those values are changing is really what you're being asked to decide upon. But for the most part, that is a very ongoing figure. And you see treasury, even though it kind of waved up and down for the last 10 years, that was due to a couple of one-time things that went on with right-of-way payments for the Ronan Urban. But we're just hovering around the $20, $21 million a year. I do a couple of things with, trying to help you understand what's happening to timber. Board feet harvested is way below the annual allowable cut. The department expresses that the NEPA review is one reason why there's a lot of delay between the time they may plan for a sale and the time they can actually put it up for sale and execute it. Stumpage receipts, just downward trend, that's that dotted line, unfortunately. It's hard to imagine in my lifetime that's how we paid per capita, was timber stumpage. And it would be a sad day if we were doing that now.
Got a question?
Ruth, you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the timber stumpage and the number of employees that we have. Are we able to figure out, by the allowable cut, how many employees we should have? I mean, I know they do much more than just, do the timber, but they also manage the forest, but do we know? I mean, are we gonna be reduced in our compact because of how, much timber we're getting out?
That is an excellent question. There is no direct correlation to how many folks are on the ground doing this particular work to what we're funded in the compact. The compact amounts are the recurring program amounts that were set when we took the program.
Mm-hmm.
So BIA and its, methods or however had allocated, I believe at that time, 1.1 or 2 million. We've added on to that since then. Their program is now at 178 or 75, excuse me. So they have been given programmatic increases by us reallocating what we can, but it's not related to what they're actually turning out in the way of harvest and actual income to the tribe. So, okay. Leases, permits, rights of way. I learned it was rights of way, not right of ways. I don't know. I have to look up Google or whatever, my helpful assistant. So that, as you see, the trend line is sloping upward. Do have those couple little outlying years. Ronan Urban paying those rights away. Nice little $1 million amounts. But that again is, as I said, a fairly stable, consistent number. Getting into local revenue, this is one where it has a lot of variance because year over year, just different things will happen. Can't absolutely predict. But one of the big things in local revenue is Indian preference. Indian preference fees that are assessed on the project work generates now the largest source of local revenue, over $800,000 in 24. So all you got to think about is all that ARPA project work, any construction, any of the dam project work. All of those contractors are assessed that fee, except for corporations, except the tribal corporations.
Ruthie, how many times?
Except the tribal corporations. Go ahead.
How many times is that fee just tacked onto the cost of our contracts that we hire on here so that we're actually paying that fee to ourselves?
It's not done that way that I understand. So let's just say we have $1 million project that is awarded to contractor Bob. That 3% is billed once that project cost is determined. So that $30,000 is billed by Indian preference to that contractor. They can't put it in their bill when they progress and go on the project itself, say periodic basis. One contractor did try to do that, and the department kind of overlooked it. I was only looking at it because I was trying to work with an amount to put in budget expense because it was a building for tribal health. So it's a good question that are the contractors simply raising their bid to encompass that? I don't know.
I've actually remember several contract bids reflecting it in the bid.
Moving back to, Indian preference fees, we don't project this. It's not a projected amount in local revenue because we can't predict it. So it ends up actually offsetting under collected revenue like stumpage. So in 25 and 24, both, this is a very meaningful add-on to available revenue. The Bison Range is trending up, very well. Every year we've had it, it's gone up. I imagine at some point soon, it's going to start leveling because they cannot keep, well, I mean, maybe they could keep increasing their admission fees or other fees that they charge for. And then the others, shoreline permits. That's one I sort of mentioned to Mr. Jansen. Is it time to raise the permit fees? They reported in 24 that they had a number of non-payers. And I kind of said, well, are you sending the crew out to remove the structures? They haven't paid because I think they have to pay by July 1st. And he was telling me this in February. So I was sort of concerned about that.
Go ahead, Martin.
Ruth, I assume there's a way that you could calculate how much we're not getting from the particular tribal corporation in preference fees?
The big one would be the IDIQ that SKMM has. So they have it's a multi-million-dollar contract that I understand. There's actually more than one. So you just pick that one and say, well, 3% of that is what we've foregone. I said something to Greg about it, and he said, well, they're supposed to make it up in a different way. I said, well, I'm just mentioning it because I would be remiss in not mentioning it. I'm understanding that at times, both housing and the college and other corporations have wiggled from it, and gaming in their anticipated expansion project, that would be, well, take 3% of 16 million. That's not a small amount. The reason I'm kind of hawkish on this one is we had a former tribal attorney with the highway reconstruction years back, negotiated it from 3% to 1%. So what we would have been entitled on just the millions of dollars of project work was. So from that point forward, I made it a point to really pay attention to what was going on with this one, because it's very much a lost opportunity for the tribe. We spend nothing to get that. I mean, when you look at it, it's not something we have to.
If John Nice was the one that was doing all these contracts, would we be getting that?
Yeah, they would have had to do that.
We would have got the 3%.
Mhm.
So in other words, going through SKMM.
In tribal funded though, it is a different thing. I'm talking about when it's not funded by the tribe, but it is happening on the reservation, like the SKIM project, which is a federal award. We'd be essentially getting that turned into tribal local revenue through that assessment. So I couldn't not mention that. Kind of looking at the corporate dividends, the big shiny smiley kids that we're coming to adore. In my now tenure, corporate dividends was nothing. You look at that far left in fiscal 16, just a short little bar that represented 1.7 that SK Technologies paid, and that was all we got. And it took gaming a while after they kind of restructured after the end of class 3, and then getting all of their facilities online and organizational management changes, finally start performing. EKI had a slow start, as we know, and they kind of had to get themselves reorganized. So, now to the present, we rely on these dividends. We are now counting on them. If that changes even slightly, all we can do on our other side is to cut back on the spend or risk reserves. I'm not saying you can't do that. It would have to be,
Go ahead, Tom.
thought through.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would expect hopefully the best ever from, at least in a long time, from SNK Electronics in the future, because they've gotten a bunch of new awards.
Electronics.
Mhm. Yeah, it's basically because we've depleted a lot of our military resources in Ukraine and other places. they have to reboot that. They have to replace a lot of that, and it's older technology that SNK Electronics can provide. So they just were awarded, I think, over 8 million in a couple of contracts just a little while ago. So it's looking really good. Looking really good so it's the beginning of that company.
Mhm. What we, kind of talk, Greg and I talk about when the corps come in and talk to the shareholder, I'm not so interested in what their year did, profitable or what. I'm looking at the change in their net position, which is suggesting they're either growing or they're just kind of holding. And, I guess the message to the shareholder is, quiz them on that. They know right now, when I'm kind of doing my computation for 26 and estimating right now what I believe the dividends should be. Don't expect them to go down from where they're at. And I would believe, especially EKI, they're on track with their power trades. They know where they're supposed to be in a year. And that's a year from now is when we should have their declared dividend and even part of it paid to us. So keeping that in your mind, and I know you have so many moving things you deal with, but the message is very clear. This is now in excess of regular tribal general fund revenue. Unless you do something with dam rental, none of these pieces will change.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall, years ago,
Leave that there.
we decreased the dam rental amount from 20 million to 18 million, and that was supposed to be for a 5-year period. And that was to try to get EKI going in the marketing. And since then, they've been just killing it and doing awesome in getting us huge revenue or huge dividends back. But I thought that was only for a 5-year period that they were supposed to do that, and then the dam rental was going to go back up to 20 million. So I think it's something we should look into, and cause I think we're past 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're missing out on that extra $2 million a year. For I don't know how many years, but I just recollect that. Just wanted to bring that up because I think it's something we need to discuss again.
That change happened before I was on council, so it's been over 5 years.
Well, Mike, I think you were on council
When we moved to 18? No, it was at 18 when I got on council. Already. You remember, Martin? I remember 18 is all I ever remember.
Charles, remember that?
And then the other part of it is when we changed their holding, when their retained earnings, when we moved that to 75% from, I think you told me it was 60 or something like that before. Danielle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I've heard this brought up more than once, and what are we going to do to increase that? I guess what is our next step to bring it from the 18 to the 20? Do we need to take action on that today? Because we just keep discussing it and it's not changing. So, or do we need to see a contract first?
I do believe that's in the shareholders' purview to do that. We should do it in the shareholder meeting, I would believe. So, and both the rental could be discussed here, but the retained earnings would be the shareholder decision, I think. So I would want them to be on notice before we actually just dumped it on them.
Yeah, so.
Ruthie.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and just to follow up on the comment about dam rental, I've shared this probably ever since this started, and it was in 2017 when the council approved the fixing of the rental. That was a council action. It was the corporation that obviously requested it. And it's fixed through the duration of the license. That was the agreement made at that time. What the point I make is, as that is your biggest treasury revenue, any opportunity to increase per capita is tied to this. So if we are flattening and, kind of leveling that, you don't have a lot of opportunity to increase per capita unless you're gonna cut some spending or somehow balance it off. If we keep getting a healthy return of dividends, that's what's gonna shore up tribal government operations. And the treasury revenue then becomes a larger share of it dedicated to increased per capita. And for your interest, we do CPI calculations of the per capita, what the spending power is or the purchasing power. So when we increased it from 1,200 to 1,500, that was in December of 2021. So calculating if you were to increase for this December, which is the first one in the next fiscal year, you could expect to make an increase to 1,800 per year, per member. That would bring the total outlay for per capita just over 14 million. So again, looking far into the future, 18 million sounds like that's fine and well. But, for years now, I have, looked at what it would be had we just kept with CPI indexing as it had been. Right now, we would be at 23 million, not 20. So the lost opportunity there from the fixing, whether or not we've recouped that through dividend, not yet, not quite, because you have to calculate each year that it would have went up and then total that. So if that opportunity is there, that is very meaningful. That's a fixed operating cost for the corporation. They have to do it. It might change their bottom line, but our dividend is resting on whether their bottom line is what it is. So I expressed to Greg, I said, I'd rather have certainty, not whether or not they feel as though we want to retain more of our profit for, what have you. And the other is the loan terms. I said the lost interest on the loan itself, because it was a bigger loan than gaming got. And gaming had to ride through with 6% the entire time. Not EKI. They had their terms reduced, and that lost interest is income that would have come back to us for the government to spend. So 2 points on that. It is your decision as shareholder. We're just conversating about the idea that the rental is treasury, trust revenue, the aspect of that and how important it is for dedication to things like the per capita. All right, is that all on that one? We always seem to diverge off. Indirect cost, this is a type of general fund revenue. It's really, you could see it as it's a reimbursement that we're allowed to collect. And then we can pool that towards the expense that actually can be funded that does all of that management and oversight, like council and like accounting and IT and facilities and so on. Giving you an idea of just how large the government is operating at. When you start your IDC proposal, you're looking at a prior audited period. So our fiscal 25 rate went to what happened in 23 actual expenditure. So in looking at 26, which is what we're trying to predict now, we look at what we believe is the 24 direct cost base of about 100 million. That's just direct cost. There's other costs in there that are not included because they're not allowed to be computed. So it's going to be contractual and capital, which tend to be very large items. And then just applying our current indirect cost rate on that, that's how I estimate the actual program assessed revenue to come in 26 of just over 15 million, round that down. And then the administrative user fees that is paid by credit, housing, and MVP, because they don't use all parts of the indirect cost pool. So they are paying negotiated fees of just over $1 million. So that's how I'm projecting 16 million is going to become a general fund like collection that helps us offset the indirect cost pool. So that is, just explaining that. Third party collection, again, we're remaining conservative. You do not have to, you'd have to be living under a rock to not be aware that this current Congress is bent on doing some things to Medicaid in just the direction that they've given out to the Energy and Commerce. They're saying cut 800 billion out of your package of spending in Energy and Commerce. Medicaid's 880 billion. So I don't know how you would cut 800 without doing something to that. That would be a big hit on tribal health. That we don't want to see a day where the system that we worked very hard to build is now going to be kind of held up and even reduced. So we're gravely concerned about that and continue to be. I mean, it started off a few years back when they expanded eligibility because of the pandemic. And even previous to that, it started under Affordable Care Act. Well, I don't know, you just say Affordable Care Act, current Congress, it just wants to do away with it or privatize, or I'm not sure what their plan is, but looking at third party, it's a critical part. 40% of their current operation is third party. You take that away or pull it down, you're going to change what we're doing now with the healthcare system in total.
Go, James.
Yeah, thank you. Ruth, do you know what the balance is of I keep saying deferred services, they call it something else now.
Purchase
No,
care.
the money we set aside 20 years ago to pay for just the tribal members' bills, and they call it something else now. You can call it was set up as deferred services. Reason I'm asking, I want to know how much they're carrying over on that, because we set it aside to pay for just our tribal members' bills after they were run through the IHS rating system and got denied.
Mm-hmm.
Then we said, okay, that money set aside to pay our tribal member bills. And then Kevin basically let it run the balance over. Mm-hmm. And we were like, spend it. There should be nothing left. This was one of the directives. We said, spend it until it's gone. And Kevin wouldn't spend it all. It was like carrying over and carrying over and carrying over. So I'm not quite sure what's in that amount or that account anymore.
So what we do, I understand how you're describing that, but in reality, things kind of went very south, as you recall. At the end of our fiscal 2005, we returned the program to IHS. We had spent all available dollars and then some, and we still couldn't keep up, spending $17-18 million a year. We haven't even hit close to that in the last few years that we've had the program, not even close. So a couple of things, when we took the program back in 2016, so as we're kind of getting back into our, receiving and adjudicating and taking care of all the claims, it's taken us several years even to approach what the annual funded amount is. So we've accumulated money in purchase care. They continue to allocate $500,000 a year to spend on this deferred, but technically it doesn't exist. We were doing that because of the lack of funding, and we're at life and limb. And so you'd come in going, I need a knee. And they go, well, but you're still alive. So we defer you. And at some point, should somehow it magically become funding available for you to have your knee, then you could move on the deferred list. Joe and I have talked about that, and I've just kind of expressed, I said, well, why do we need to do this when we've got a multi-million-dollar, never fully expends program sitting over here? And that's kind of my take on this is the paid care program has been asked to reconcile every single year they have had the program, beginning in our fiscal 17. We started December 1st of 2016, so we're only 10 months of that fiscal year, but they have an amount of funding that we got. And then it's just as simple as, okay, you had that much funding and how much actually got spent. There's a carry forward. You can use that for future years, but you need to get through and reconcile and settle all your obligations from that year, because some take a long time to finish. Some of them may have become Medicaid, so they're not actually going to sit on our obligation. They moved to Medicaid or some other payer. And so this is a kind of a continuous process. but keep moving that deobligated or unspent amount forward. You could even do it, you know, Ruth Simple style and say, well, I know how much total funding has come down since 2017. It's $100 million or whatever. It's around that, 82, 92, 100. I lose track. And then simply look at what our audited expense was for the program and then minus it and say that's what is still there. The annual amount, we've just been looking at it, it was remaining right at around just under 13 million. And so in IHS's way of doing it, they would divide their total amount allowed to obligate, as the way the area office would do it, by 52 and say that's the weekly obligation, you know, give or take. So week one, you obligate what have you, according to all the referrals or even the actual bills, because a lot of them come in after the fact. And then you just keep moving that forward kind of on a running basis, just to make sure you're not over obligating your total. Well, we're in a little better position than that because we already know we have a reserve that's available. But it's an ongoing, continual job for them to keep those obligations reconciled. And a lot of them would happen simply by, you know, yeah, James, you can have your knee, but then you go, you know, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that right now. So just, you know, forget it. So they deobligate the referral to bone and joint and move on with their life. But, you know, this is something that is a huge job just in and of itself. And as leadership has changed down there, I'm, you know, sitting back going, hey, who's in charge of that now? Because this is really, really, you know, complex and kind of important. But yeah, I would suggest that maybe through the health committee, you know, you get some questions asked and answered about that particular thing, because, you know, when him and I in just conversation have agreed that there's really no such thing now. If people are denied, it's because they're not eligible.
Yeah,
I mean,
because,
they're-
yeah, so it sounds like it's morphed into paid care is what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And the intent was for anybody, they submit their bill, go through the IHS rating, they get denied. And they get denied in that process, then that money was available to pay the bill. And it was just for tribal members, not for IHS eligible. And that was the fight we were battling with IHS back in those days, because we wanted close social and economic ties. I said, no, you can't do that. You can't have that eligibility criteria. And we're like, well, wait, Bemidji region does that. Coeur d'Alene does that. But they were saying to us at that time, you cannot have close social and economic ties as one of your eligibility criteria. And so we were fighting with them on that. And that's why we set up the deferred services, is because they wouldn't budge on what we were saying our eligibility should be for folks. And so we set up deferred services, and this is just for tribal members. Everybody else, it's IHS eligible, run them through that rating. But if it's a tribal member, then they should get that paid. And so that got lost in the translation over the years, it sounds like, because that was the intent. You know, it wasn't for everybody. And if there's bills not being paid and they're tribal members, that paid care should go to pay that bill. And so that was the intent, and it did get done at the first year it was instituted. It didn't get done because Kevin had a overcarry. I'm like, why do you have an overcarry in this account and we still had tribal members saying we don't have bills paid? And we're like, wait, you have $1 million carryover in this, and we've got tribal members that don't have. And so it was a problematic at the beginning because Kevin didn't like council telling him what to do, is my opinion. And so we said, here, spend this money. Any other program, if we'd have said, here's $500,000, go spend it on tribal members, they would have spent it on tribal members. There would have been no carryover. And we gave him a carte blanche, basically, spend it, get people's bills paid. And anyway, I'm bringing up an old issue I have with my relative.
Tom?
Oh, I got a lot of issues with all
We could
kinds of
go on
relatives.
for a
I'm not
while.
gonna go there.
Go ahead.
Just, as long as we're, talking about healthcare and the Medicaid issue, I think it'd really be great if we approved a letter to go to our two senators and our two congressmen to remind them that the state of Montana and Helena has fully endorsed Medicaid and Medicaid expansion.
Mhm.
And so is the governor of the state. And the governor is the one that backed three of them.
Mhm.
So I think, if that doesn't, I think they really need to be reminded of that, that this is a red state and this red state supports Medicaid and Medicaid expansion. It's critical for the entire state, not just our tribal community, but across the state and all the healthcare facilities, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think it would be great if we could do a letter to remind them all of that. And, again, that should be a focal point that if people call their offices, they should do that along with Medicare and don't mess with Social Security. I did hear that there are some people that are on disabilities that aren't getting their Social Security checks right now as we speak. So that's going to be an issue, and that could be another burden upon our healthcare. Also, that if they don't fix that real quick. Go ahead, Ruth.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, just one last comment. A lot of the restraint that has been historically on paid care before that CHS was due to the funding. And now that we are in a whole different place with that, again, I would just say as, council acting as health committee, ought to, quiz the management and just say, you are aware of the eligibility. This is why eligibility was so tight. A tribe or service unit could restrict CHS paid care to just enrolled members of the tribe on the reservation. Other Indians, descendants, nope. And they did that because of funding. I would suggest that, if they can analyze what's available to the fund, their claims experience, and they could suggest to you that, we have the close social and economic ties. It's generally going to be, just for an example, it's someone who is a descendant, so they are eligible for direct care as a person of Indian descent, but they're married to a member, so there's a social tie. Said if they get cancer and they're uninsured, we're just going to ignore that? Really? We're just going to not serve them? I hope I'm not in the tribe that would act in such a way. But, those are things that as, the overseer of this program, this compacted program that we have, as long as we're within regulations, we can do, what it enables us to do. So with that, I don't mind talking about the healthcare system. It is very critical. It's multi-million-dollar entity, hundreds of people, 10,000 active users as of the end of 2024. So kind of a big deal. The dedicated trust. This is one of my most favorite things to talk about as far as tribal funds. And I don't mind sharing just how it's all happened, because this is history, as I've shared with my coworker. I said, this is what we will talk about until I'm in here creaking in on my walker, 85 years old, going, what's happening with that? In 2012. So in 2012, as we got the Salazar settlement, the dedicated trust was what was in balance after we paid the per capita and after we had settled a request to contribute to NARF, and after we dedicated $2 million to purchase tribal members' undivided interests. So 67 million was what started it. 30 million went to EKI for their loan, and that left 37. Gaming was positioning, they were gonna go for, I think at most it was 27. Council brought down the amount of that expansion. So when it was all said and done, there was a little over 8 million that was not ever allocated from the original settlement. From that time forward, as the loans have come back and investment, you see we just had one below line year in 2015. We had placed some of that in investment with that Native American finance advisors or fund advisors. It did not do well. There was some things working against it. It wasn't just that company. But we got out of there, and you can see we've generally had a trend upward. the dedicated trust net realized gains on investment is pretty important to the tribe. It's another one of those, you know, it's important now. If you deplete the corpus, if you decide, well, you know, we want to take 30 million and just do this, then it's gone and we no longer earn investment. We're only going to get loan interest back from the two entities that have the loans. So that's my preach on dedicated trust. I had mentioned to Chairman a day ago that, you know, when Mr. Claremont and I talked about, you know, what would the tribe do in the spend of the 150 after we knew 78 was going to go out for per capita. He says, well, we got to try to create a wealth fund, a perpetual fund, a reserve, something that when we come to the day, now remember, this is 2012, we're anticipating the water compact. We're throwing all dollars into the water compact. We got to get ready for the water compact. We got to get ready for dam acquisition. So it seems like from this freeze point in 2011 until it went on seemingly forever, it was always don't spend money, save money, don't spend money. We froze budgets, we froze pay, we did all kinds of very restrictive motions. And then all of a sudden, with the pandemic and this extra funding coming in and a few other things working in our favor, we could start seeing the real benefit of, well, even though we could only capture some of that, that was our trust for a perpetual fund, at least it was something. Rec permits, thankful to the increase that got put in place, but it's not all. We have asked the department to report the volume of permits, because what we believe has actually happened is it's not necessarily we're selling as much or more, but it's the price increase that's transmitting this actual increase. So you just look back to before we increased them and say, well, we were getting, you know, 600,000-700,000, and now we've doubled that, but we did a significant price increase. So they seem challenged to come forward with that, but it is something that I think is worth having them report. We'll ask for them to do that again and see if we can start to make sense of what the increased prices are actually doing. What we've assumed is you're going to price people just completely out of them. They don't buy them anymore. So you're actually selling few, but at a higher price. And that kind of goes to regulation and enforcement. Despite a $1 million game warden program in total, if you count the tribal general fund plus mitigations share of that, the amount of actual citations is very low. I was surprised when I saw that report. I thought it was a misprint. So just because we have enforcement going on, it doesn't mean that there's going to be actual citations or cases in court, so to speak. The revenue sharing, as I was saying, the big one is from motor fuels tax. So price per gallon doesn't seem to do really much of anything. Remember, we had $4 a gallon in, was it 2020? And that's not too far. That's actually more than 2024 because it's a per gallon tax. When you're paying that $3.10, that 26 cents is already in there. So yeah, alcohol tax revenue kind of slowly climbing. And the cannabis one we haven't reported because we're only in our second year. Class 2 gaming, as we were saying, it's really struggled. You know, 10 years ago, we wouldn't even be excited about it. And now, as you see from the last 3 years, they're hovering right around $6 million. Again, that's another one to be watching. You know, their gross revenue goes up every single year from gaming. They've never gone down. You should be questioning them hard about that. You know, are you projecting an increase in gaming revenue? But the other side of that is, from what I understand about Indian gaming in general and in the trends just before the pandemic, is if you're not positioning your operation to capture non-gaming revenue, you're just going to go flat and stay there. And then your costs will actually keep going up though. Your footprint is the same. It's kind of like Kerr Dam. That dam isn't any bigger, you can't force it to generate more. It's where it is. In fact, you risk it being less if you were just going on sale of generated. So in gaming, it's the size of the facility, the population that can come in there and be a customer. If you're just simply counting on people putting money in a machine, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. I had been at previous conferences at NIGA, so to speak, or for instance, and had, really good workshops or whatever they offer there. And the discussion was going to that, you have to have very good food and beverage, you have to have very good entertainment and other non-gaming cost drivers that will help you keep your gaming revenue, your handle, as they call it, where it's at, or hopefully even growing. So, and I had expressed, to Greg, he said something that just about had my head blow up. He says, well, they're wondering about how many days it'll take them as they turn the machines off and they move to their new place. I said, did you say days? He said, yeah, they said days. I said, oh, stop that talk already. I said, they want to just shut off our cash flow, right? For days? No, they can't do it like that. And then I was joking. I'm just kind of being lighthearted about it. I said, no, they got to challenge themselves to do that in 2 hours. I said, they can't turn those machines off. That's the money. So, look at when they present their audit, this is what I look at. I look at what's the gaming revenue, and I'm going to project it's more than what it was last year. And the change in their net position, whether their operating costs are going up, whether their food and beverage is losing or not, whether their hospitality, which is a hotel, is it losing or not. And it shouldn't be. They shouldn't be losing. If they are, that's concerning. And hoping that the gaming just offsets it, that's not a good approach. Happy as ever to see, what does come in. Now getting to kind of just the closing comments, if you will. We don't have much of it's getting easier and easier to do these reports to you because there's not a lot changing. It's more or less just pulling out a couple of, main things that are a little bit different. We identify what we're seeing. We keep watching for the president to put out some sort of a little blueprint peek ahead. I'm not optimistic at all about that. The Congress in both chambers is becoming, man, I don't know it is becoming rather interesting how disorganized they're getting on some of the simple issues. We read something that had happened yesterday and I was kind of joking about it, but then I was kind of concerned about it. Opportunities, what we have had to look at for years now, and it's been happening on the corporate side, is really stepping up, stepping on the gas on trying to create new revenue. We're exactly opposite of this government administration. They're just saying, cut the spending, don't raise the revenue, because they're raising revenues on taxes, right? Us taxpayers raise their revenue. We don't have that here. So all we can do is look for different ways to increase or develop new ways of revenue to come in. This is really, what it means to be sovereign. We don't care what they do. We don't care who gets elected. I mean, we do. But when our actual financial livelihood is resting on that, this is something that, as I said, the people that I've been brought up under, worked for in this organization, is what we've always tried to aim for, to be less dependent on that external funding. Then when we do make these outlays, it should develop and support a tribal economy. What is important to this tribe? There's certain types of development and business activity that we will never engage in. I don't foresee that. So we have to be mindful of that. Increasing the water compact funding to start to offset some of these tribal outlays for those activities there. This is one I talk about pretty carefully. We are moving to that. There's entire programs that I believe would fit under water compact funding and relieve our general fund spend on them. And that would be recommended to you if that becomes available. And in the final, whatever we end up with, however we end up, I spoke to Chairman the other day about, what's currently sitting in allocated contracts and grants is $82 million. When we had our budget meeting with the management, I said, we don't have an extra 82 million tribal dollars to pick up those grant programs. It's not there. And these are some of the hard decisions that are going to come before you. I hope they don't. I'd love to be wrong. But if they start coming before you, we've been given notice of one grant already that was immediately stopped as of last week. Agency issued a notice, and it was a $904,000 grant. And thankfully, we hadn't begun much of it, and grants are reimbursed basis. So it wasn't like they sent it to us and now we send it back. But that was the lost opportunity there. And it's a person's job that was funded. So the department had to look for a place for that person, a tribal member, to go. As this starts to become evident, as I said, it's almost just day by day. Well, what is Doggy or whoever or whatever? HHS was exiting 10,000 bodies, but planned to somehow reassign them within the department, like to the Indian Health Service. So Kennedy said, we're not going to freeze the hiring in the Indian Health Service. We don't want to do that. And so they did start reopening their vacancies of about almost 300 across the nation. That doesn't affect us, but it kind of does. If these were positions at the area office or headquarters and we're trying to move things along, I'm going to meet with Brian Upton about that very thing. I said it doesn't help us. In BIA, even though the CR for this year, it didn't cut at the program level, it did cut IHS sanitation facilities project funding. And that is not a good thing, not for Indian country. So what they are planning for 26, I'm not sure. We all read and listen to the same things. And as soon as we know, then we'll know. So after this report, when you just have accepted that we provided it to you, we will then come back in a couple more weeks, and then we'll actually set up the allocations. We actually are going it's similar to what the Congress does, except you don't have all these subcommittees. It's just your committee of the whole. And we're basically going to express to you what you currently have allocated and where, and then what's available, and is it going to make it? And so we simply bring forward all the current allocations, hope that it balances with available revenue, or that the pull from reserve is not an astronomical, unreasonable amount. And then we'll be ready to have the programs actually try to work with what they're given.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ruthie, once again, thank you for your presentation and your due diligence and all the work you do. I'm gonna get back to Danielle's point about increasing the rent of the hydropower facility. I think we need to do that as quickly as possible. I can't express the amount of inflation that people are facing, that the current dividends are not covering inflation. And we see that all the time. That's why we're dealing with the LEAP thing. We want to be able to make sure that our membership has enough resources. And so it seems like a simple fix to me, and I believe EKI can afford it. So I would certainly like to see us do that whenever, have them come in, but work on that immediately and try to get that done so it can be in this budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. Watch for that.
It can come in as rent instead of as a dividend, so go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'd say we put they don't have a dam, but I'd like to see technologies come in here as well. I mean, if we're gonna put pressure on one company, we need to apply it to them all. I mean, we got technologies out there for years, years and years and years that, oh, we got $1 billion contract with the Air Force. Well, how come you're not giving us a bigger dividend? Nothing, zero. And so, and they've been in existence a lot longer than the dam, you know, than we've owned it. So
Yep.
I think they need to be put on the spot as well.
Yeah, in their projection of the 5-year quote pledge, they said 3% a year. So we got 10, and then we get 10.3, then we get 10.6. Then I'm going, well, in 5 years, we get up to 11.1. Come on.
Yeah, I believe at one point, economic development was supposed to assess the corporations and look at what we should be receiving. And of course, that's kind of been I guess, a waste of time because it's never happened, and otherwise we would probably be getting more money. And, you know, I don't think any of us on council, maybe James has had a chance to really get into like corporation stuff because he's served on a board here and there, but yeah, I think we don't hold some of our programs and departments to and make them accountable to do the job that we ask them to do, and then here we end up losing out. And I don't think it's any corporation's fault. I mean, they're gonna try to retain, but also their plan of operations, like EKI, directs on what they give and we approve it. So we really need to take a look at those and definitely get what we can, but certainly I don't want to break any corporation either for a return, because definitely that's now what we're surviving off. We never used to survive off of this. We'd have reserves, we'd have other things that Vern would come in with and say, yeah, we're spending the reserves down throughout the year. And but yeah, to me, it's scary. I mean, we don't have, because if one of these corporations go down because of the economy now, we're gonna be in a world of hurt. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, and just one last comment. So just, keep a couple figures in your head, 82 million in contracts and grants, 70 million in tribal general fund spend. And I share that very freely and openly. It's in the resolutions you just adopted. The 70 million is tribal priorities. If we could get federal or grant funding for those, we'd get it. But these are priorities that go to language, culture, our land. It goes to benefits to tribal members, goes to acquisition of lands. These are things that are important to us, and protection of that, and hundreds of jobs. The growth in the spend, you saw 340 million, so 70 million of that is tribal. Doesn't seem like a big share, but it's important when you look at it that way. If we cannot sustain what is there, then to me, loss of that federal funding just means those activities stop. We don't have the funding, we don't do them anymore. As we've looked at, this is one interesting thing happening. So we have a program in the BIA compact where the program officials in BIA are now telling us, why don't you go to a 638 contract, and then it'll go through doggy review, and then we'll have you do this and that. And I could not believe what I was reading. I forwarded it to Attorney Upton and I said, just look at this. I said, we would give that back before we would consider such an initiative. And I'm just kind of fearful now, if this is sort of the tone that they're beginning with a single program, I don't quite know where their, energies or their motives lay. And, Chairman, you and I visited about what was going to happen now with all this work you did in negotiated rulemaking in the Title IV that impacts our BIA funded programs and the process for that. I don't know. It's really concerning. But, keeping in mind, 70 million that you put out for the tribe to carry out important programs. And that certainly could change up or down, however you saw fit. And this is the work that we continue to do to support that. At any time, feel free to call us up, see us. I now have this help. She's doing a lot of work with the departments on compliance, which is really critical now, as we're forced to look extremely carefully and closely at every single thing that we're doing. Making sure that, as I said, the priorities are fulfilled as best as possible.
Good question for Ruthie? Entertain a motion to accept the report. Motion by Martin, second by Tom. All in favor?
I'll change the date on that to April 2nd as well. I
Unanimous.
thought it was coming in tomorrow.
Thank you, Ruthie.
Thank you.
Can we go into executive?
We will go out of regular into exec. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Just a question for the council, Mr. Chairman, council members, quarterly Friday, just wanted to see if legal is needed for any updates on anything. Okay.
Yeah, just what's happening.
Okay, I'll stay, I know we have depositions with the water court stuff, but I'll stay back, so, okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tom.
I just wonder if we could review the quarterly agenda real quick.
We got so far for the agenda for quarterly. What do we got for the quarterly agenda right now?
All you guys told me was just Jordan and the update, the legislative update and the PL 280. But just before that, Sadie wanted to just talk about or give you guys an update on the 50th anniversary. And that was it. And breakfast served again.
Jennifer.
I know Patricia wanted to be on to do an update about Red Shield 8, the regional native treatment facility.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of it. Nobody told me, so.
Oh, okay.
But I can if that's what the chairman and council wants.
Be on there.
Put it on there.
I have a suggestion. Rather than having the membership wait until the end of the meeting to make comments, I would like them to be at the front. Because a lot of the times they have to wait and many of them many people just leave after the presentations are done. So if we can have the membership speak first, if they have comments to make.
Okay, so do you want that right after the elders speak? Because you
Yes,
guys
please.
already moved elders first. Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All the council agree?
That's all right with council. That was just my suggestion.
Might take up all day, but that's all right with me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, but I think you need to be realistic with everybody's time too. If we get somebody out here that's filibustering, somebody's got to politely say, okay, you've said your piece, get to the point and move on. And just, I mean, the chairman or any of us should be able to just say, okay, there's other people out here that want to speak and you need to give everybody a chance. And I think we just need to be tough on it.
If you guys are okay with it, I'll let them know when they sign up. And then I'm gonna let them know they're on the time limit because I know exactly what you're.
And you're gonna piss somebody off, but there's other people that get filibustered out of speaking, Len, because we get one person in here that likes to hear themselves talk and we don't want to cut them down or shut them off. I mean, but just say, hey, you've said your piece. What do you got to add? Do it in a diplomatic way. And, because I've had to do that as chair.
Then
So
talk about it really quick.
anyway, thank you.
Thought I did adjourn.